Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mario Cristobal, the Miami Hurricanes are in a really intriguing spot heading into 2025, specifically at the quarterback position, right? Obviously, Cam Ward moving on to the NFL. You got a really talented quarterback in Emory Williams, who we've seen play some really good football early on in his career for Miami going into year three. And then the conversation starts happening. Hey, should we go get a transfer portal quarterback? Should we really build around Emory Williams? Want to get into that conversation a little bit more. And I give the Miami Hurricane fans a ton of credit. It is, especially after just hitting on a guy like Cam Ward, it's really easy to start seeing those quarterbacks enter in the portal and say, hey, we should go get this guy or this guy or this guy. I think one, there's no Cam Ward in this year's transfer portal that I've seen hit the portal just yet. Now, will there be a quarterback that hits later on? We'll see. That's kind of to be determined. I don't think any team is going to get a Cam Ward. And I give the Miami Hurricane fans a lot of credit because that's a conversation that's been happening. And it seems like a lot of the Miami fans are ready to rock and roll with Emory Williams heading into 2025. Now, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that, but then you look at the quarterback room and say he'll be your veteran quarterback in the room, where you have redshirt sophomore Emory Williams, you have Judd Anderson, who's going to be a redshirt freshman, and then you have true freshman Luke Nickel, who you guys know I'm a massive fan of. What are the pros and cons of riding with Emory Williams? That's the conversation I want to get into. Now, before we do it, as always, look, there's a lot of different ways to see this, and I would love for the Miami Hurricane fans to let it fly in the comment section. Your takes on it. Should we rock with Emory Williams? Should we go look for a veteran quarterback? Fascinating conversation. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with the pros of kind of rocking with Emory Williams going into 2025. And I think it first says, look, you get the opportunity to really help a lot of other positions on this roster. A lot of resources were going into Cam Ward in that 2024 roster. Rightfully so. Like the value that Cam Ward, he was worth every single penny that Miami gave to him. But you saw at certain position groups that it probably wasn't good enough. And so if you decide to go with Emory Williams instead of paying and using a lot of resources to bring in another transfer portal quarterback, it allows you to allocate those resources kind of throughout this Miami Hurricanes roster and kind of make some other position groups better. And I think more importantly, it allows you to put a lot of talent around Emory Williams too. Some talent that we're going to talk about over the next couple of minutes. Number two, this is a kind of a growing conversation in the landscape of college football, and that is how to balance recruiting the high school ranks and using the transfer portal. You look at Florida State. This is probably the best example where they had a really talented Luke Kromenhoek who was going into year two. I think he expected to probably be the guy in 2025, and I'm not necessarily blaming Mike Norvell and Florida State for going out and getting a guy like Thomas Castellanos, but when they did, there's no doubt in I think any of our minds that because they were kicking the tires on Thomas Castellanos, Luke Kromenhoek said, hey, I'm going to go transfer out. And so you do play that risky game, so to speak. If you're going to go add quarterbacks in the portal, you might squeeze out. That's one of those positions where only one person can play. And so you might squeeze out some quarterbacks that you really like. And then I think number three, you want to send a message to the guys on the high school recruiting trail that you're not going to just get replaced from the portal every single year. Like if you're trying to recruit some of the elite quarterbacks at the high school ranks, what does it mean when they see, all right, Emory Williams was going into year three? That's kind of the year you kind of expect your quarterback to start, if not earlier. And then they go out and get a transfer portal quarterback to replace him. I think that might not send a great message to a lot of the quarterbacks that might be looking to play their football for the Miami Hurricanes. And I think lastly, you probably want to show that you can develop quarterbacks at the high school ranks too. Had a ton of success with Cam Ward. And I'm not saying Cam Ward got better when he got to Miami. Like the film from Cam Ward at Miami in 2024 versus what we saw in 2023 at Washington State, there's no question Cam Ward was developed the right way under Shannon Dawson in this offense. But he wasn't necessarily homegrown from the Miami Hurricanes high school recruiting class. And so you're also sending a message that, hey, you commit to us out of high school, you're going to get the right development and you're going to get the opportunity to be the guy for this Miami Hurricanes offense. That those to me are the three pros of going with Emory Williams. Outside of the fact that I'm just kind of a fan of this kid. You go back to his true freshman year, clearly was a little bit probably wasn't ready to start, but when he had the opportunity to start, it wasn't always pretty. But this kid's kind of a gamer, and he's got all the traits to be a really good quarterback. And now he's going year 3 in the into the Shannon Dawson offense. Now the cons here. The biggest con to me would be you don't have a proven quarterback on this roster, right? Emory Williams, although we like what we've seen, we haven't seen him do it at a super high level at the collegiate level. That's not saying he can't. That's just saying you don't have a proven guy like you did with Cam Ward last year. I think secondly, and probably most importantly, you're just young. Like Emory Williams is going to be the most experienced quarterback on this roster. He's a redshirt sophomore that I believe has 2 starts to his names. Then you have kind of a project quarterback, for lack of better terms, in Judd Anderson. And you have a guy like Luke Nickel, who y'all know, like I'm very, very high on Luke Nickel, but he's going to be a true freshman. Has played a lot of football, 7A football in Georgia, but he's going to be a true freshman. And so the big con here is not necessarily, it's kind of 2 things. 1, you're young. 2, you don't have a proven guy in the room. Again, not saying that can't be Emory Williams, but it's just the case going into the 2025 year. Now, one of the biggest pros of going with a guy like Emory Williams, and this is kind of just like that conversation that NFL teams have, is, hey, we got a pile of resources. We have to allocate those resources to build a roster around this team. If you don't use a big chunk of those resources going out and getting a transfer portal quarterback, well, guess what? You still have that chunk that you can allocate to other parts in your roster. I think it starts with, hey, let's build an offense that Emory Williams can be successful with. Pretty confident about the offensive line. We're going to talk about one of them. Damn confident in the running back room with whether Damian Martinez comes back or not, Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle. I think you're pretty comfortable with the wide receivers, but you probably want to add some proven guys, especially if you're going to rock with someone like Emory Williams, who's a young, inexperienced quarterback. Probably want to surround himself with some wide receivers that have played some football. Go to Eric Rivers first from FIU. And this was a guy that we've talked about a lot. Like, it was kind of a no-brainer that Miami should be pursuing Eric Rivers. It's exactly what they're doing. He's going to be on campus, I believe, early next week for Miami. I'm not going to say Xavier Restrepo 2.0, but pretty damn close. Like, a ton of juice from that slot. And one thing that Eric Rivers brings, that access vertically down the field. Yes, Eric Rivers is a 5'11", 175-pound wide receiver that probably excels the most with the football in his hands in creating separation. He's also a guy that averaged 18.5 yards per catch in the 2024 year. This is a guy that when you turn on the FIU film, you see him winning vertically behind defenses repeatedly. So yes, he gives you that, replacement for Xavier Restrepo at the slot. He's also a guy that can win vertically down the field quite well. And so Eric Rivers is a guy that I'm a huge fan of because he can do everything. There's just not really a thing Eric Rivers can't do. I think another one that would make a lot of sense, I know Miami likes him, CJ Daniels. They were going after CJ Daniels last year when he hit the portal from Liberty. Now he's in the portal again. 6'2", 205, bigger-bodied wide receiver, probably replaces a guy like Jacoby George. Him and Isaiah Horton, that's going to be a force. You add a guy like Eric Rivers and CJ Daniels, one, I think they balance each other out well. You get Eric Rivers a little bit shorter, a little bit quicker, better separator. CJ Daniels, big-bodied boundary wide receiver. Those 2 guys bring certain elements that you want to add in your passing attack. They also add like that veteran presence for younger wide receivers like Ray or Nikar or JoJo Trader. If you're Miami and you decide to go with Emory Williams, you probably want to add some veteran presences as your pass catchers, because I don't know if you want Emory Williams starting at quarterback in his first couple of starts in 2025 with JoJo Trader, Nikar, all guys that I think could be really good football players, but you probably want some proven commodities and experience along that offense as well. So if you decide to go with a guy like Emory Williams, you get some more resources to put around him, and more specifically on the defensive side of the football as well. Last guy I'll talk about, and this one would make a lot of sense, especially if you decide to go with Emory Williams, experienced center. This is something Alex Mirabal and Mario Cristobal have done repeatedly. 2 years ago was Matt Lee. Last year was Zach Carpenter. This year it could be Jordan White. And Jordan White's getting coveted and pursued by almost every P4 program in the country. Love Jordan White because he played over 2,200 snaps, gives you that center guard versatility. This one to me just makes so much sense, especially if you're going to go with Emory Williams. And so again, the pros are there. And one, it's do we believe in Emory Williams? And from everything you hear, and I'm not connected to the program, I'm not in the building, but everything you hear is that this staff really likes Emory Williams. He's going into year 3. That's kind of the time you want to see your high school quarterbacks playing. And if you decide to go with Emory Williams, got some resources to build around him and specifically help out this defense. The only what I would say con is that you don't have a ton of experience in that room, and maybe it's doing something like this. You decide to ride with Emory Williams. You bring in a veteran quarterback that maybe competes with him, but maybe he's going to be that backup quarterback. Maybe that's the best situation for Miami. But to pursue a guy like Malik Murphy or Fernando Mendoza, maybe that's not the best avenue for this Miami. It could be. And again, you probably just got to trust Shannon Dawson and Mario Cristobal because they're the ones who really know where Emory Williams is at in terms of his development. That's that conversation. From what we're seeing, it does seem like Miami might be comfortable rocking with Emory Williams. And that might not be a bad thing because it allows you to have a more complete roster in 2025. We'll see where they go. Wanted to hop on and talk, but I think it's a fascinating roster building conversation. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.